just in case. We were talking about arrays, right? And by now, you probably had the chance to process last lecture and to play with the assignments. Do you have any questions about arrays, the assignments, the meaning of life, anything like that?
42.
Yes.
Oh, so I don't get the review R, I don't know what you're asking, I guess. On this.
On the assignment, we have a class review.
Yes. No.
I have no clue what the assignment is. Sorry. Let me go look.
Yes.
I crafted the assignment a year ago. Whenever. Let's see. Documents, projects, intro Java, no class. Okay. This is A8, right? So I am giving you a class review, right? That stores reviews of a product, of a something, right? You would have a text. This is the horriblest product I've used, and then a number of stars, 5, right? They pay me good money for this, so my review is 5, right? Whatever. Does that idea make sense? Now,
I have a question about the 5. Do you even put it in a 6 because it starts at 0?
It's an int, and I don't tell you.
It's possible to have 0 stars.
It's possible to have 0 stars.
Okay.
And it's possible to have 237 stars. I'm not telling you, right? And the class doesn't do any validation, right? It's actually reviews for a game, not for any other kind of product, right? Why is it reviews for a game? Because our next thing is a game info object, right? And that's the one where you have to do, right? I'm actually giving you a piece of it. It has a title, right? Now, you also need to add a couple of things to it, right? You need to add some sort of array to keep reviews, right? And what you need to do is to be able to implement add review, and that would add the review to the array, right? Get number of reviews, right? You can, depends on what you do, you can either keep a counter or just return the length of that array than you did, right? Get sum of stars, go through your array and add up the stars, right? There are reviews, each review has a get number of stars, which is public, right? Yes?
But when you're talking about number of reviews, I've run into problems with, I tried doing that with array length, but since it's strings, when you set it to a size, is whenever I set the array to a size.
That is true, you're right. You cannot do array.length in this case, sorry. Yes, with arrays you cannot do array.length because you have to set it to an array of 10 or 20, right?
Okay.
So it will have 20, even though they are empty. So you need to keep track of a counter to how many reviews you have actually added.
But if it's, so when you create the array and you set the size, is it just setting, this is how many spaces are in it?
Exactly. It is how many spaces, and since these are objects, right, you get, if you set an array of 20 elements, you get 20 object references, right? They're all references to reviews, and they're initialized to null.
But they start at 0, right?
You get from 0 to 19.
Yes, okay. All right.
Yeah.
That's what I was asking earlier, like with the 5 and 6. Okay, that makes sense, thank you.
Does this make sense? Yes, and you're right. Don't listen to me. Don't use array.length. Because that's, actually there is a way to do it with array.length, but it's probably not what you want. So you need to keep a counter to keep track. And this is a common technique when you're using arrays, right? Arrays actually suck, and you normally don't use them. But they are the simplest thing. And so you need to come up with these weird kinds of techniques. We are going to see next class after, actually not next class. We're going to see something else next class. We're going to see inheritance and stuff next class. And then we'll see collections, where you see array list and vector and list, and those guys which can grow. And so they do all this magic for you. And this one, you need to keep track of how many reviews you actually have. Does that make sense? So actually, this is not that complicated. Most of your stuff is going to be one-liners. Right? Once you figure out, it's a couple of lines for most of this. Any other questions? Yes? Yeah.
Is there any way, because I know there's no test to figure this out, but for ad review, how would you be able to check?
Wait, there are tests.
Oh, I'm sorry, for this particular.
What do you mean?
For ad review, there's no grading test.
Oh, there is no test for ad review because there is no way for with the public interface, right? You cannot know whether ad review succeeded by itself, right? You do ad review and then get number of reviews, right? And that should return. If I just added a review, I had 0, then I just had 1, then that should get me 1. That's my test. I need the other stuff, right? And get some reviews will get me, if I put a review with 5 stars, then get sum of stars or whatever, would get me.
And I guess the next thing I'd ask is, so review contains number of stars in the actual text.
Yes, and you don't really care about the text in this particular example. You're really just caring about the number of stars. But I wanted to complicate your life and make it an array of objects rather than an array of fields. Some other kind of application, you could get me only the reviews that contain this word or something like that. That's how it's gonna go next semester. No, not next semester. Yeah, probably not next semester. I'm probably gonna get a break next semester. Gonna take a break next semester. Having a job and a half gets you burned out.
Yeah.
As you all probably know, because that's what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
A full-time job and 3 classes or something like that. In your case, but anyway. And yeah, these are more kind of standard functions that have nothing to do with reviews, right? Does that make sense? Do you all understand what you need to do with the game info object? Yes? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
I don't know how to ask. So do we have to, are we going to be using title at all? Or is that just there to...
As far as I see, no. That's just there to make it an object rather than in a way. So I don't see any of the requirements require you to do anything with the title. And you don't terribly care because add review gives you a review already with a title or not, you don't care. Right, so let's do this. when you are testing, right, you would do stuff like this: game info g equals new game info, review r equals new review. And I think in our review we have a constructor, right, where I pass it to review. Oops, this is Java, so I need double quotes. Right? This is the kind of stuff that you're doing to kind of verify, right?
How do you get the total number
Of
views?
the total number of reviews? What do you mean? Number of stars? Get sum of stars?
No, I'm talking about if you go up.
It's right above stars.
It's or I'm sorry, ad review. That's what I was going to be looking at. Ad review. For the total number of reviews, is that going to be? Are we passing that number through? Like, is that something?
What total number of reviews? Get number of reviews? Is that what you? Where is total?
No, ad review. Like for ad review.
For ad review, I'm not telling you how many reviews, right?
Oh, you're not telling me? Okay.
No, I just told you to add a review. If you had 5, now you have 6. If you had 0, now you have 1, right? Why would I need to tell you how many you have? You need to keep track of how many you have, right?
Okay.
What I am telling you, right, is that your array needs to be able to contain up to 10 and doesn't need to be able to contain up to 10. Basically, my test will not call add review on the same game info more than 10 times. Right? Does that make sense? You, of course, are welcome to test it with 20. And it's not a big deal, it's just whichever number you put into the array, right? But I'm telling you, basically, put 10. And you need to keep track of how many reviews, right?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Kind of. So, I guess, yeah, okay, I see what they're doing wrong. Thank you.
Cool. Then let's play with a few things with arrays.
That helped me out. Thank you so much.
Cool. We did some things with arrays of objects, right? We had points. We can do a couple of other interesting things. One thing that we didn't do is use recursion. Why? Because we decided we didn't want to use recursion. But we may want to, right? For example, or let's do sum. How can we calculate the sum of an array of ints, right? we need an extra variable, right? We do some here, and we can just move it. We're doing sorts. Array sum. Let me take it out from here and put it in a loop, and then we are going to do it with recursion. Right? And I am doing this in C, not in Java. They'll look almost the same, but not quite the same. I'm good. Now, if I'm using recursion, I need an extra number, right? And we're going to see what it looks like. So what do I do? How do I calculate the sum of an array starting at a given index, right? Does that make sense? What's the easy case? What's our base case? What's our easy thing? What's the easy one to do? One element, right? Even easier than one element. Zero elements. So if the index is outside of the array, right? If that from is outside of the array, and then what's my answer? So if you have an array of 5 elements, and then give me the sum of all those elements starting from the element number 6. Actually, from the element number 5. What's the answer? Zero, right? There's nothing there, so the sum is 0. Does that make sense? So what does that look in code? How do we know what's the last element of my array? If I have an array of 5 elements, what's the last index of my element? 4, right? I have 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? So in code, how do I know it? Well, it's the length of my array minus 1, right? So if from is greater than or equal than the length of my array, how do I get the length of my array? Numbers.length, right? Since my array is called numbers. What do I return? 0, right? That's my base case. Now, assuming that that's not true, right? What do I return? To give me a given element, right? What else can I return? Well, I need to add this element, right? What's this element? The element number. The element number from, right? So numbers of from. Plus, right? Wouldn't it be cool if I had a function that could add all the elements of an array starting from a given place? Right? What's the name of that function? Sum, right? My same array of numbers, and now where do I start adding from? Where do I want to start adding from? Would this work? Plus 1, right? I'm going up. Isn't this cool? Let me do it. With a normal loop, and so we can see. So we can do that, right? We can do print array A2, and let me go change my print array so that it actually prints. What is print array? Print array never did print line, so I'm always putting it at the end. So let me put it here. So print array actually prints a print line. So I'm gonna do this, and then system.out.println sum of numbers, or A2. And then sum of A2, comma 0. And I should get the same answer, right? And it's the sum of all those numbers. Is 60, 73, 80, 89, 91, 101? Yay! And we get the exact same answer, right? So we did it right. In a way, what is this number? This extra number in my recursive call? It is this loop variable when I'm looping. Does that make sense? So hopefully this helps you, first of all, remember recursion, and then also clarify, now that you have loops and recursion, tie them together, right? They are the same thing. Not the same thing, but the same thing. Is this cool or what? Now, one thing that we haven't done is do two-dimensional arrays, right? So let's do some of two-dimensional arrays. How do I do a 2D array? Well, it's an array of whatever's, okay? So I just put 2 of these. And that's an array of arrays. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? So, actually, let me, let's first do this so it doesn't bug me. But we probably want to be able to print it first, right? How can we print a two-dimensional array? How do we go through all the elements of a two-dimensional array, right? Well, in this case, right, numbers is an array of arrays of ints, right? So what is numbers of 0? What kind of thing is numbers of 0? Is it an int?
It does say int.
No. Right?
It's an array.
Oh yeah, right.
Numbers of 0 is an array of ints.
Yes.
Does that make sense? Just like if numbers was an array of ints, then numbers of 0 is an int, right? If number is an array of watermelons, then number of 0 is a watermelon. If numbers is an array of ints, the numbers of 0 is an array of ints. Does that make sense? Yes? Cool. So, when do I stop in my loop? I'm going to print each array, right? Now numbers of 0 is an array, right? So one thing that I can do is okay, now when do I stop? I'm going to operate on numbers of I, right? So what does that mean? When do I stop? What's the last element, right, of numbers of I? Yes, right? So my j should be less than numbers of I dot length. Is that the same as numbers dot length? Probably not, right? It's unrelated, may or may not be the same. Now, how do I access that particular element? It's numbers of I gives me the array, right? Now, what gives me the element number j of that array? That's the array, so this is the element number j of that array. Does that make sense? Is the element number j of the array numbers of I. Right?
I believe I got very confused on that.
What do I want to print, right? First, my I is going through the array, the first array, right? The big array. That array contains arrays. So numbers sub 0, right, is an array.
Okay.
Right? The numbers of I is an array. So how do I get the element number j of like an array, whatever array I have? I just put the square brackets and put the j in there, right? So numbers of I is the array, and numbers of I of j is the element inside that array. Does this make sense? Some sense.
So it's gonna print every single element of the inside of the array?
Yes. And then it's printing every array. Right?
And is it gonna tell which element belongs to number 0, number 1, number 2?
Yes, because that's how it's going, right? This is, say, when j is 2 and I is 1, this is the element number 2 of the first, or the array number 1, right? Does that make sense? Some sense. Let's go play more. By the way, since my arguments are of a different type, I could have things with the same name, right? And method overloading just gets the right one. If that makes you each, just change the names. So when we run this, we get, right? this is my array, AR2D, right? It has 3 arrays. One array contains numbers 1, 2, and 3. The other array contains 4, 5, 6, 7. The other one is 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. So this is one array. This is another array. This is another array. So when I print it, right, it's going and printing the right elements, right? So when I go, I is 0, right? So numbers of I inside the function is going to be this array, right? Numbers of 0 is this array. So when j is 0, numbers of 0, 0 is this guy. Does that idea make sense? Yes, no, maybe? Yes, close enough. We can also cheat, and I tend to do that a lot. What am I trying to do here? I'm trying to print an array of numbers, right? Wouldn't it be cool if I had a function that prints an array of numbers?
Isn't there just a print array?
It's just do. It's print array. Numbers of I. Woohoo! Just to confuse you, are we using recursion in that function? No. It looks like it because I'm using functions with the same name, but they are different functions. Does that make sense? One takes an array of arrays, the other one just takes an array. What is easier to do? Have nested loops or have these things? Or functions? I tend to do functions. I seldom do nested loops just because I want to do things so simple that even I can do them. Right? That's the point. Want to make the things so simple that even I can do it. Even I can do it on a Friday afternoon. Right.
Where is this second method?
It was defined above somewhere.
Oh, okay.
We have been using it. It's here. I should do Apple X. Does this make sense? Is this cool or what? What? Let's get this one and let's do it. We're going to add up all those numbers, right? We need an accumulator.
So, since they both have the same name, does Java tell them apart because of the arguments?
Yes.
They are different?
Yes. It tells them apart by the type of the arguments. By the type and the number and position of the argument.
So it doesn't matter if they have the same name.
Doesn't matter. Java and most object-oriented languages support function overloading. It doesn't matter as long as they don't have the same kinds of arguments. And there is sometimes that leads to confusion. Like if you have something that takes an int and something that takes a float, and what you're passing is a double, the compiler will tell you, wait, I don't know which one did you want me to convert to. Please cast it to the right thing and do either a float or a double. Or either a float or an int. Right? And so sometimes the compiler doesn't know which one you meant, but for the most part, it's easy. And again, if it confuses you, other than when I require it in an interface, right? If it confuses you, just give them different names, right? Let's call this print array 2D, and this one print array 1D, right? So now this guy can call print array 1D. It is perfectly okay to do things that don't confuse you. Well, let me actually do this. Let me keep this one as print array. And this one, let's call it print array 2D. By now you should see where this is going, right? What happens if we have an array of 3 dimensions? Well, it's just an array of arrays of arrays. No big deal. We can deal with it either with a really deep nested loop or with functions and methods, right? You can nest them to reasonably any level, right? Most of the time we don't do that except in math, right? Some math problems lend themselves to matrices, right? And then you do matrix multiplication and those kinds of things. For the most part, we tend to do objects that contain other objects, and right? So you usually have an array of objects, right? And that object may contain another array. So in the assignment, you're building a game info that has an array of reviews. You may end up having something else that has an array of game infos. So that's really a 2D array, but you don't see it like that. That's how I tend to do most of this stuff. This way of doing matrix multiplication in Java is horribly inefficient compared to something like Fortran that actually does matrices. So if you do matrix multiplication, you normally do it in Fortran or something like that. And you call those things from Java through some magic. Actually, you don't. Somebody does that for you, and you just call a library that somebody gave you. So let's try to add up all the numbers in a matrix, right? In a 2D array, in an array of arrays. What do? We are going through the first level, right? So now we have stuff like numbers of 0, which is an array, right? So what do? How do we find out the sum of that array? Do another for loop, right? Then how do I get the element of the array? It's numbers of what? Numbers of I, j. Yeah. Does this make sense? And it might even work. Ninety-one sounds about right. 13 times 6, 60, 78 and a half. Right? 13 times 7. 70, 91. Perfect. Is this cool? Can we do it with a for each loop, with a for loop that doesn't use i's and j's, right? Which we tend to use a lot. If we are going to do that, right, what's going to be the type of our first variable? Oops. Does this make sense? Isn't this cool? Never exercised it, but just make sure that we get the same result. Yeah, that's good. Any questions? Any other kinds of examples that we want to do? Do we want to do more examples, or do we want to use the next 30 minutes or so for finishing the assignment? Any particular preference?
Speaking for myself, I learn far better by doing than hearing anyway.
Cool.
And because you are using the position inside the array, it really doesn't matter if you have like inside the array, if you have a string or an object.
No, except for the kinds of things that I can do, right? If it is
Yeah, let's say for printing the array.
for printing the array, no. Actually, we will see as a kind of extra thing. There are ways using generics. There are generics in Java, there are templates in C++, and so I still call them templates because that's where I learned them first. Where you can actually define a function, right? Since you're just doing system.out.println and everybody will have it, you can just define a function and say, okay, this will have, you sort of define the type, so this will print an array of any type. And that will do those things. But you're not required to learn that stuff for the class. We will be tested on it. We'll learn, or we'll go over it. But yeah, it is basically the same thing, right? To printing any kind of stuff. But right now, you still need to define the cut and paste the same code and change the types. Generics allow us to not cut and paste the type. Cool. And let me stop the recording, and you guys get to play. And if you need help, feel free to ask me stuff. If you don't need help, feel free to not.